Welcome to the Crime Redefined podcast, produced by Zero Cliff Media. Coming to you from the US Bank Tower, high above downtown Los Angeles. In our podcast, we drill deep into forensics and criminal investigation from the viewpoint of the defense, as well as explore the intersection of the media and the justice system.
Welcome to Crime Redefined. I'm Dion Mitchell here with my co-host Mehul Angeria. We really appreciate all of our listeners. We really want to take the time to always say thanks. And thanks to our social media followers as well.
Yes, absolutely. We really appreciate it. And we hope that we're making content that's on point, that everybody's enjoying. And please continue to give us your comments and your likes and all that kind of feedback.
Yeah, so people that follow us and listen to our episodes or podcast, you're going to recognize this name. Today we have a past guest, Aleida K. Wahn, back to walk us through a really remarkable case.
Yes, indeed. As you may recall, Aleida K. Wahn is an attorney, legal analyst, and true crime writer extraordinaire. And you know, Dion, it's a small world. Just this week, Aleida was covering the press conference around the Jane Dorotchik murder case dismissal that I actually had the pleasure of working on with the Loyola Project for the Innocent, or LPI. And of course, LPI was also past Crime Redefined guests.
Yeah, huge win, and props to you and the team on the Dorotchik verdict.
Thank you. And boy, Aleida was all over it, asking good questions at the press conference.
She was. So today with her, we are going to focus on a single case, the amazing tale of Diana Lovejoy. Aleida has written extensively on her website about this case, which has also been featured on the Dateline episode, The Night of the New Moon, Mehul.
Yeah, and Aleida appeared on camera on Oxygen's Snapped show featuring the Diana Lovejoy case, and she gave all of her wonderful expert insight. You know, Aleida was in the courtroom start to finish on this case, so she certainly is what she's talking about. And she wrote an article on her website, and I think the title of this article really captures it nicely. So the title is "When Divorce Is Not Enough. Did Diana Lovejoy hire a gunman to kill her husband?" Well, Dion, in 2017, the jury said she sure did. And
yes, they did in a big way.
Yeah, exactly. So subsequently, the judge handed down a 26-year to life sentence for Diana, who I guess got off relatively easy because the gunman, Weldon McDavid, well, he's in the can, 50 years to life.
Yeah, this is definitely one of those cases where it's stranger than fiction and you can't make it up. And then to make things even more interesting, this case takes place in beautiful Carlsbad, California. I mean, this is like one of those picturesque little Southern California beach towns. Great people, great food, great beaches, awesome lifestyle. So having something, as crazy as this event take place really shook the community. Diana Lovejoy was married to Greg Mulvihill in 2007, and they were married for 7 years. And it really seemed like one of those ideal, perfect, Southern California love stories and a Southern California life.
Yeah, it's interesting how many times the preface to a murder story is, the idyllic life that they had and where they were. And it's like,
I guess not so much, right?
Yeah, it's like the perfect Dateline story, right? So we'll let Aleida pick it up from here and tell us about this sordid tale of, first of all, there were shocking allegations that Diana leveled against Greg, her husband, and then a wild conspiracy plot, the net result of which is that Greg was shot. However, he survived that, and he was able to testify against Diana, his ex-wife, and her new lover. So lots of courtroom drama.
Absolutely. So if you're listening at home, grab some popcorn. If you're driving, enjoy the ride. There is no shortage of intrigue, twists, and turns in this case. So Mehul, let's go to the interview.
Absolutely.
Welcome back to Crime Redefined, Aleida.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
It's been almost a year, which is crazy, since we last talked to you. What have you been up to?
Well, I've been attending different trials, a lot of criminal trials here in San Diego. And then I'm actually working on a big project. I'm taking a lot of the articles that I have written over the last 9 years, and I'm putting them into books. And my big idea was to do 4 books. But so far, I have 2 that are almost completed. So we'll see. It's actually been a lot more work than I had originally thought. So we'll see if I make it to the 4, but I definitely have 2.
Congratulations. That's really cool.
Yeah, we look forward to reading
Thank you very
those.
much. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, so let's get into the subject of today's episode, and that's the Diana Lovejoy case. So, Aleida, for you, where does this one rank in terms of, the cases with interesting plot twists and turns?
I think this ranks up really high. It's because it really has everything in it. It has the intrigue, it has the shock value, it has all these questions that arise from the facts. I think it's really one of the most riveting cases I've gone to. It has to be up in the top 10.
Okay, interesting. So why don't we talk a little bit about the key players first to set the stage? So, Aleida, could you tell us about Diana Lovejoy's life before she married Greg Mulvihill?
Well, Diana Lovejoy was a very accomplished woman. And I think that's why this case became so intriguing, or at least partly why it became intriguing, because she was very successful. She was working as a software technical writer. She's making over a six-figure income. And she was also an extreme athlete. So she competed in triathlons, and she even had her own fitness business where she helped people do personal training. So she was really a person that loved the outdoors. And if you Googled her name and you saw her on the internet, I mean, she is just in incredible shape. I mean, she looks like someone that's working out 24/7. So this was someone that was very accomplished. She had just done a lot of things with her life. And then she met her husband, Greg, and he also loved the outdoors. And so they kind of were this couple that just really, really embraced this fitness lifestyle.
So same question for Greg. What was he like, if you know, prior to meeting Diana?
Well, he worked as a software engineer. So both he and Diana were both very smart, very intelligent. And he also liked the outdoors. So the two of them just had this connection. I mean, she was doing this software technical writing. He was working as a software engineer. And then they were both just doing these incredible athletic pursuits.
Do you know how they met? Like what the venue, was it through sports or was it through tech?
I don't recall, because that was not actually brought out in the trial. And so I don't have that answer for you. I'm sorry.
You know what? Actually, in one of the documentaries I saw, it sounded like they met on a dating website.
Oh, that does sound familiar, that they did meet through some type of website. That's interesting, because you would think they would maybe have met at one of these sporting events.
Through their passion, right?
Right.
Well, so the other key player in this sad triumvirate would be Weldon McDavid. So, Aleida, tell us a little bit about his background leading up to the time he met Diana, and then exactly how those two met.
Well, Weldon McDavid had been in the Marines for 12 years. And while he was in the Marines, he did all kinds of things, but he was very skilled in weaponry. So even training at a sniper school at one time. So he had all these awards. I mean, too many to even list, of being this incredible expert marksman. And then when he left the military, he continued to do this weaponry business, and he started working for this iron sights in Oceanside, which was to teach people how to shoot. And then he also opened his own practice, so to speak, by helping various people do training and weaponry and self-defense. So he was someone that was really, really involved in the area of training people to I guess enjoy firearms, but also to be able to be safe and to protect themselves.
Do you know approximately how old he was when he got sucked into this situation?
He was 50 at the time of the trial. And the time that he met Diana, I think, was about 2 years before. So he's like maybe around 48 or so. And he was married. And he had his wife actually supported him through this entire trial emotionally. I mean, and they had this new baby. And, despite all these things that he did that are going to come out as we talk, she never left him. She was steadfast in her support. She was in that courtroom. And then even going on various shows. I know Dateline did a show on the case. So she went on that and even was defending him and supportive of him at that time.
Okay, so now that we have the stage is kind of set here, let's see how this all comes together. We just discussed how they met. What was their marriage like, and what do you think the cause was of their divorce?
Well, they had this magical marriage to begin with. I mean, their wedding pictures show them getting married in like almost like this forest area. Just as they both have these radiant smiles. It just looked like this fabulous life. And as I had talked about how much they liked their outdoor pursuits and they were always doing wonderful things outside. And then they wanted they wanted to have a family. And so that was a hardship in a way for them because Diana ended up suffering 8 miscarriages. So imagine 8 miscarriages. I mean, that's a ton. So this was really, really this tough time to try to have this baby, but they finally have their dream child, this, beloved son, and they're in this really happy place. But then Greg injures himself. I believe it was his shoulder, and then he had to be out of work for a time. So then Diana became the breadwinner, and it just seemed like things started to unravel. And Diana, in her legal documents in 2014, says that he actually has this psychotic break. And that he's even he told her that I wished you dead. And so he's become almost this different person. And now she's starting to fear for her safety. She's saying that she woke to him sexually assaulting her. And it's just becoming this whole new person that she says she doesn't even know who this person is. And that he's also now smoking marijuana and maybe taking other drugs. He's using all this money, and she's just kind of like left to wonder what's happening here.
In your opinion, how much do you think that was manufactured, and how much of that do you think was real?
And see, that's the question. I don't know, but I know in the trial, the prosecutor said that she made up all this stuff. She made up, she decided she did not want to share this beloved child, and that she didn't want to pay him in this divorce. And so she decided to make up all this stuff with the absolute worst allegation ever possible, that he was molesting their child. So she said that the prosecutor said that she made this stuff up. And here's Greg, who has to try to defend now against these horrible, horrible claims and charges. And he has to try everything to get back his good name. And so the prosecutor is saying Diana went to the family court and tried to basically get this child sole custody and everything. And then when that didn't work, she moves to something much more sinister, which was murder.
What about this business of their child being sick? And I think she wanted to give him a large dose of guaifenesin or something like that. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
That none of that ever came out during the trial.
Oh, right.
But I do, and in fact, a lot of the things related to her son were not to be addressed. The judge even said that they were not to even mention his name during the court. So that didn't come out. But I did read in some documents and also elsewhere that they had differing ideas of how they should treat the child, and she didn't want to do certain procedures, and she had her own ideas of what should be done, and that caused a lot of conflict in the marriage because Greg had other ideas.
How was it that Greg was ultimately cleared of some of these serious allegations, especially about the sexual abuse?
Well, what happened is that ultimately it went through the family court for 2 years and 4 months. So a really long time. And eventually, he had gone through the sexual evaluation, everybody had gone through this psychological evaluation. The court had ordered this child custody evaluation that was done by a psychologist. So they did everything that could possibly be done in that family court. And at the end of that, the doctor recommended, hey, I've seen all this stuff, but I'm recommending 50-50 custody. And then as it turned out, the parties, Diana and Greg, with their attorneys, agreed to that. So they stipulated to that. So it wasn't like they were both in court saying, no, I don't agree to that. They stipulated that, okay, we'll make it 50-50, which was a huge cry from how it started. Because, in July of 2014, Diana has gone now to get this temporary restraining order. And Greg comes home to the marital home with their young son, and there's a sheriff deputy. And he's handed papers basically saying, Mr. Mulvihill, you have to leave. You pack up your stuff and leave right now.
Sounds like a setup.
You are kicked out of this home. And he's like, wait, what is going on here? So in her documents, she had stated under the penalty of perjury in her declaration that he had been sexually abusing her. She was waking up to him doing these things to her. And she had concerns about their son and that he was abusing drugs, that he had this psychotic break, and that he had even told her that he wished during this psychotic break that he had wished her dead. So now she said she's in fear. So she files this temporary restraining order. It's granted. 15 days later, they go to the court, to the family court, and they have the full hearing, because now Greg has the documents. It's his time to be able to, raise his defense. He's hired an attorney. And at that hearing, what the parties agreed to was that they would do this psychological evaluation and that Greg would have supervised visitation of only 10 hours per week with their child. So that order or that arrangement of just 10 hours per week stayed in effect for a long time, for over a year. And then they had the child custody evaluation. They're doing the sexual evaluation, the psychological evaluation, doing all these different evaluations. And then finally, at the end of all this, after like 2 years, and I think it was like 2 years and 4 months, a long time, that's when they finally say, hey, we've investigated all this stuff. We're not really seeing anything. And I'm going to recommend 50-50 custody.
And in fact, didn't at least some of the experts say that really Greg would be the better parent?
Yes. And see, that's the whole thing. And that's what the prosecutor is saying is that, okay, Diana made up all these horrible things, the worst being that her husband's is molesting their child. And then at the end of the day, she doesn't get what she wants in family court. So that's when she decides, hey, I need a better plan. I'm going to get my way. And I'm going to have him killed.
Right. So why do you think, what is it in Diana's past or her personality that made her willing to go to, the first extreme of just accusing Greg of the sexual abuse, and then of course, her other plan, but were there any clues in her background that she would go that far?
Well, and that's, I think, the mystery of this case. And I think that is what made this case so perplexing and even intriguing was like, you had Diana Lovejoy. She's an attractive woman. She's an educated woman. She's a software technical writer making over 6-figure income, this extreme athlete. They're living in this beautiful home that has this ocean view. They have their beloved child. Why would she throw all that away? And I think that's a question that I feel like I ask a lot in these cases, because I cover a lot of murder cases. And you wonder, like in the
smart people making dumb decisions, right?
Right. Or why would you, like in the Larry Millette case, why, you may be so upset with your wife, but you're like, I'm going to kill her. But then what would hold you back would be, oh, wait, I've got these 3 children and I don't want to hurt them. And that would hold you back. But no, it doesn't. So you wonder, why would somebody throw it all away? Unless, of course, you believe her defense. And her defense was very different than, of course, than what the prosecutor said.
So it obviously, it sounds like the scorched, for her anyway, the scorched earth accusations weren't enough. How did she go? Walk us through, how did she go about hatching the plan to, quote, scare Greg with Weldon's help? So
what happened was that Diana said that she, is in fear of her life from Greg, that he's stalking her, that he's just making her so fearful that she decides that she's going to go to this iron sights and learn how to shoot and take self-defense lessons. And the person that ends up teaching her this, who works at Iron Sights, is Weldon McDavid. And so that's how she initially met him. So he teaches her how to shoot. He helps and then they become close. He helps her with self-defense lessons. Then he even goes to her house and helps install a security system. And then they start this affair. So in court, he said they only were intimate 3 times, but I don't know about that. But they did develop this intimate relationship.
So can you take us through that fateful night in September of 2016 and maybe starting with the significance of it being a so-called night of the new moon?
Yes. So basically on that night, well, the significance of the new moon is that the prosecution was saying that, this was so well planned. This was a murder plot. They even researched to find out when they could get the best light. So they were going to lure Greg to this remote area off this dirt path that was like a hiking path, and it was going to be dark, but if they had this full moon, it would at least give some illumination and some light for Weldon to shoot Greg. So that was one of the pieces of evidence that they brought in, was this whole fact that, this was something that was well thought out. They even thought about the lighting and got this full moon and the night of the new moon. So basically what happens in this case is that on Thursday night, September 1st of 2016, Greg Mulvihill receives this late night phone call. It's 10:44 at night, so it's pushing 11 o'clock at night. And he gets this phone call from a mysterious stranger. And this man has this deep voice and then identifies himself as an investigator who's been hired by his ex-wife, Diana. And the man tells him he had documents he would want to see, evidence of him abusing his son, who at that time was 4 years old, which his ex-wife could use against him in court. And the thing is, they had no such evidence. But they figured if Greg comes out to the secluded spot that we're going to tell him to go to, that's going to prove that he's guilty of something. Because why would an innocent person come? Who's going to come basically in the dark of night to this place? So he he tells Greg, you got to decide if you want to see these documents. Boom, hangs up the phone. Then he calls back and he tells them, there will be a package that will be taped to a power pole off a dirt path near where Greg lived in Carlsbad. So it's like a hiking path that Diana knew Greg had walked on before and hiked on before. And it's semi-secluded. And they were going to tape this package to that pole. And this mysterious stranger, who turns out to be Weldon McDavid, tells him to go and pick up this package.
So I'm going to go back to something you said about with Weldon and the going to the shooting range. How much of Diana going to that range and coming up with this plot was organic or pre-planned?
To come up with this plot? Well, her Aunt Diana ends up testifying in the trial against Diana, her niece. And Aunt Diana talks about this day that she goes out to dinner with Diana and her young son. It happened to be a Christmas day. And Diana was telling her all about how Greg was tormenting her and harassing her and stalking her, and what could she do to get rid of him and to deal with this big problem. And then she says that I've given it a lot of thought, and nothing's going to stop him. He could be hit by a truck, become a quadriplegic, and even then he would still find a way to torment me. So I've thought about every way I can think of. And I want to know, do you know anybody who could scare him or kill him? So if you believe Aunt Diana's testimony, which the jurors later said they really did, because it cost her family. Testifying against her niece cost her family. And so they said, we believe that testimony, that Diana had been thinking about what could I do? And she talked about, well, I thought about even moving to a different country, but then the problems of having to learn a new language and moving to a foreign country, it was just not tenable. So maybe she talked to Weldon about it. That's what the prosecution said, that they came up with this conspiracy. But let me go back to Weldon, because with Weldon here, the whole issue too was Weldon just trying to help. And this did not come out in the trial, but it was not allowed into the trial. But Weldon had previously helped another woman, and her name was Crystal Harris. And so Crystal Harris had been in an abusive marriage. And so she had come to Weldon, just like Diana did, and said, I'm in this abusive marriage and I'm afraid of my husband. He's threatening to kill me. I need to learn how to defend myself. So Weldon taught her how to shoot. She taught her self-defense lessons. And so he really helped her. And so in that case, he kind of becomes the hero, because as it turns out, Crystal Harris ends up taping this attack on her, which she said her husband's raping her. And this goes to court, and the husband's convicted of a sex act, not rape, because the jury ends up hanging on the rape count, but they convict him of a sex act. And that was in 2008. And then from that case, actually new law came out that said that victims of sexual assault by their spouse do not have to pay spousal support, because Crystal Harris was the breadwinner and she had been ordered by the family court to pay her attacker husband support. And so that made new law. So in that whole case, Weldon comes out of that as, wow, this Marine is this hero for this woman in this abused marriage. He helped her fire under pressure. He believed her story and he helped her. So that was one aspect, was he was the hero here. Is that what he's trying to do again in this Diana Lovejoy case? Was he again trying to help a woman who was in this abusive relationship, but this time got in too far?
Okay, great. So now let's go back to September 1st, 2016. Greg gets the call, and kind of take it from there and let us know how this played out.
Sure. So Greg gets the call. He doesn't know what to do. So he calls, he ends up calling the police, and they say, well, basically it's up to you if you want to go. And so he ends up calling his boss, who lives in the same complex as he did. And his boss, Jason, says, okay, I'll go with you to this, to pick up these documents. So Greg grabs this plastic bat and a light. They called it a flashlight, but it was more like a bike light that you kind of hold in your hand. And so they drove to this path. They walk up this dark road, and they're not seeing anything taped to this power pole. They see this Angry Bird towel that's down by the base of the pole, but they don't see anything. And then all of a sudden, as Greg is shining that light around and he's like scanning that area, all of a sudden, he sees somebody, and Jason says that he sees somebody lying in the sniper position. So all of a sudden it's like, whoa, there's some guy with this barrel of this gun that I'm seeing. And right as Greg saw that, he's shot under his left armpit. So at that point, either Greg or Jason, one of them yells out, he's got a gun, or run, something to that effect. And both of them start running for their lives. And as they're running, 6 to 7 more bullets pass right by them. I mean, Jason on the witness stand said he could feel those bullets passing right next to him. And he was terrified. I mean, he kept running. Greg ran back to the car and drove away. Even though he was hit, he was able to drive away. But Jason was so terrified, he just kept running. He didn't even know where he was running. He just kept running. And so finally, Greg is able to catch up to Jason in the car and picks him up. But then Greg has been hit and he's starting to bleed so heavily, he starts to pass out, and Jason has to call 911 at that point.
So obviously this was just, setting up an animal to slaughter was the whole idea.
Yes.
Okay. So I want to go back to one other thing. Was there any money exchanged from Diana to Weldon?
Well, in the trial, they said that she agreed to pay him $2,000.
That's quite a deal.
So that's not that much to somebody. No, not big time spending, but according to Weldon and Diana, there was never this plot to kill Greg. They never were out there to kill Greg. They were there, according to Weldon, he was there only to try to collect this evidence against Greg, to show that he was actually doing harming his child, abusing his child. And so even though they didn't have any specific evidence, their testimony, or Weldon's testimony, was, well, why would an innocent man come out there? Obviously, there was something going on. And then he was going to try to videotape him coming out there and see something, he was doing something bad, or he wouldn't have come.
So I'm trying to get inside of his mind a little bit, Weldon, and say, did he see himself as like an equalizer? Like, like or was there like a financial gain? Or it sounds like, maybe there was, once they got into like a physical relationship, there was that attraction as well. So I'm just trying to like decide what was the main factor for him going in this deep, because that's a big jump from helping her get out of a marriage to shooting somebody.
Yes. And so that's the whole, that was one of the issues in the case. Did he get into deep? Has his desire to help gone too far? And that's really basically what his wife believed in the Dateline episode, was that, Weldon's a good man. He's a kind man. He just wanted to help. He wouldn't go kill somebody. So that was what his wife believed. And then in going back to the Crystal Harris case, you have Weldon talking on camera about how angry he was after he heard the tapes that, Crystal Harris had secretly taped of her husband attacking her. And he says, it was too much. I wanted to kill him. So the question became, was he like this vigilante that wanted to go out there shooting these husbands that are abusing their wives? Or did he get in too far because he's in this sexual relationship with Diane and he's just lost all thought and reason? Or did he really go out there and he really just meant to scare him and it got way out of hand? Or did they really intend to kill him?
And that was never clearly defined?
Well, according to the prosecution, there was no question. They hatched this plot and they wanted to kill him. And the only reason I went awry was because Greg brought Jason, which is where the plan off, and then he missed him when he shot at the light, or he said he shot at the light, but he shot him under the arm, and the prosecution said it was because he didn't take into account that humans move, and so he didn't shoot him. He messed up. Right. And then that's what the defense is saying. He didn't mess up. This is a highly skilled marksman. He's not going to mess up. He wasn't trying to kill him. So if he was trying to kill him, he would have been dead. Yeah,
right. So after the shooting was reported, the city was rightfully in a panic that there might be a sniper on the loose. How did the police and the city react to this possibility?
Yes. So it was in Carlsbad. And so what happened was, as soon as Jason calls that 911, there's this shooter we've just been shot at 6 to 7 times. They're like, wow, there's this active shooter. I mean, they have like a massive amount of police just descend on the area for this active shooter. And they don't find anybody, because Weldon now is long gone. But they do find something that ends up tying Weldon to this whole crime. So that's how it all kind of came about, was that, if you believe the prosecution was that they were supposed to kill Greg and then somehow get rid of his body. Diana had researched the reservoir that was right next to it. She just researched about that the day before, or close to, the time of the shooting. And they believed that if he was shot, they would just dispose of his body in that water, and that would be the end. But instead, because he didn't die and he was able to get out of there, they had to come up with this other story.
Okay, let's talk about the crime scene. You started talking about this, but I understand there's no cartridge cases found out there. But there was a very interesting source of DNA evidence. Can you talk a little bit more about what that was and why it was so key?
Yes. So, yes, one of the craziest pieces of evidence in this case, and it was actually kind of gross
yes.
and kind of funny even at times, and even Diana Lovejoy laughed about it at times, in that courtroom. So basically, when the officers descend on that shooting location, they find a towel that has human feces on it. So Weldon actually had this, as he's waiting for Greg to show up, he's got his, AR-15 rifle, and he most likely, it sounds like, got this attack of nerves or something, and he had to go to the bathroom. So he used this towel that he was laying on to go to the bathroom. But in his haste, once he realized Greg was not killed, he left, and he left that there. And so that's what they found. They did DNA testing on it, and it came back to Weldon McDavid. And so he tried to deny that he was ever at the scene. And then they brought that towel out to say, but what about this DNA? Why do we have this DNA there if you weren't there? And then he tried to come up with the story that, oh, yeah, and I remember I went for a run on that and I had to go to the bathroom. And that's what happened. But
So Weldon has this story, I was running and I had to go to the bathroom. But what was the significance of that particular towel they found? They were able to tie that to Diana Lovejoy, correct?
Yes. Thank you for raising that. So this towel that he had, I mean, this was not good planning. Because he's laying on this towel or whatever he's doing with this towel. Then he uses it to go to the bathroom. Then they end up finding a towel that matches that. It's a matching set in Diana's home when they serve a search warrant on her home. So it's like they have this towel. It's from Diana's collection at her home. And why are you there? Why are you at this spot? But going back to that towel though, too, I mean, that towel, I have to say, it did provide quite a bit of humor in that courtroom because, I mean, the prosecutor, Jody Breton, actually brought that towel out of evidence, held it up with, her gloves. And there it was with everything still on it. And it was just, and they kept showing the actual picture of it. It was just like on the overhead screen. So, I mean, and every time they did that, like all the cameramen, because some of the cameramen weren't the same people that came every day. So maybe this is the first time they've heard of this. And they would just like bust over laughing because it was just so shocking. And even at one time, Weldon, when he's on the witness stand, he was annoyed and embarrassed by it. And he even apologized. He said, "I'm sorry you guys all had to see this." And then everybody laughed. So,
I mean, they talk about, almost a closed case. Did it have her initials on the towels? Were they monogrammed?
Yeah. So this wasn't, don't take something from your house that you still have at your house.
And I would say if you're plotting a crime, watch Forensic Files, get a couple episodes under your belt to know what might be possible.
So another key piece of evidence was the track phone, the burner phone. And what was the significance and how did this there's so many things that sank Diana, but how did this one really do her in?
Well, with the phone, so Weldon McDavid, who's this mysterious stranger that calls Greg to lure him out to that site, uses this burner phone. It's a track phone that Diana had actually purchased. And so she had gone to Best Buy and had paid cash for this phone. So apparently they both thought you couldn't trace it or, paying cash, they weren't going to get caught. But the track phone registered on Greg's cell phone and the detectives traced it to the purchase at Best Buy. So they were able to do that, analysis and be able to track it back to that. And lo and behold, Best Buy has a video surveillance. Hey, we have a camera recording from that day. Do you want to see it? And there's Diana Lovejoy purchasing the phone. And then when they serve that search warrant, they find the exact coral tank top that she was wearing in the video.
So speaking of search warrants, so once they ID Weldon through the DNA, now, of course, they're going to do a search warrant on his place. So what did they find there?
Well, when they come to his house, they find they find gun parts all over the house, which isn't unusual because that's what his job is, right? He works at a place. So, but it's not. They do more searching, and they finally find up in the garage. It's hidden beneath. It's shown to be hidden that he's got the parts to this AR rifle that was used in the shooting. And so there's the upper, there's the scope, there's the brass catcher with the actual, I don't want to say the bullets, but the spent bullets in there, and the silencer, which was illegal. So they find it all there. So, and it's all hidden. So it's not, he has all these gun parts spread out all over the house, but that specific gun is hidden behind this mattress thing up in the attic.
Well, Aleida, we're aware that some of the attorneys that were involved in the trial. So can you kind of give them a scorecard? I mean, what was your opinion of how well both sides handled the trial presentation?
Well, I think that they all did an incredible job. Jody Breton, who was the prosecutor, was very skilled, and she knew her facts really well, and she was passionate, and she really went to town, I have to say, on Weldon when he took the witness stand, because he was so, he got on that witness stand. He was very arrogant. He was, he was dressed like almost like an attorney. When he walked to that stand, he was like, I'm here to tell you my story. And he even was so bold at times that he corrected the judge. So she was able to do a really, really tough cross-examination of him and bring out all these different lies that he had told, and just, making some of his testimony just sound absolutely ridiculous. So I think she did a fabulous job. And then Weldon McDavid's attorney, I think he did a great job too. That's Ricky Crawford. And he was like, he had a hard, the defense always has a hard job, I have to say, especially when you have strong evidence. So for him, I think he did a great job in saying, like, okay, was this plan stupid? Yes. Was it a plan he shouldn't have taken? Yes. Was it dumb? Yes. But he's not a killer. It was a stupid plan, but it wasn't a plan to kill. So I think that he really brought out this fact, like, okay, let's all admit this was just a dumb idea, a dumb plan. But he wasn't trying to kill somebody. He was just trying to help Diana. He believed her story that Greg was molesting the child, abusing the child. And that's all he was trying to do, is he just was trying to help. So I think he really got that point across. That's all he was trying to do, was trying to help. And they also, I think, hit really hard the fact that Weldon McDavid is this expert marksman. And he went through this long list of accomplishments that if he really had wanted to kill him, he could have killed him when he first started walking up that path. I mean, he trained at a sniper school. So if he wanted to kill him, he would be dead. And then, so I think he did a great job. And then Diana Lovejoy's attorney, Brad Patton, he, I think, also did a good job. And I've seen him in some other high profile cases, and he is always just meticulously prepared. I must say, like, he has like, I want to say almost a photographic memory. I mean, he like can pull things like, but didn't you say at this hearing, this, and this? So Diana did not testify at that trial, but I think he really fought for her in trying to hit the law really hard, that she didn't have this specific intent to kill. And that's not shown here.
Do you think it was a plus or a minus that Weldon took the stand? Well,
you know what? In a way, I think it was a minus, because he was so arrogant and so dismissive. And then even to like correct the judge, like, no, you're wrong on that. That's what he told him.
Not a good move.
Yeah. So I think that was, and he was just really, just so arrogant. Like another time they were saying, oh, well, isn't the reason why you had this bathroom caper or accident or whatever is because you really had nerves and stuff. And he was like, no, we're Marines. We rule the night. I would never, I never would have a case of nerves. So he just was like this, just infallible person that would never ever have any kinds of weakness at all. And I think that kind of hurt him. And then also his story was ridiculous at times. So I mean, for instance, when they asked him, well, why did you shoot then? And he said, well, he was just trying to remove that tactical advantage. Greg had that light, and when he shined it, it makes you blind, it messes with your night vision. And he wanted to just remove the light because he didn't know what was going to happen. But so that, I think that was kind of, I don't know, maybe if you could maybe believe that. But the next part that was ridiculous was that he said that when the men started to run, the testimony was that they started to run immediately. As soon as Greg is shot, they hear this gun, they start running. As they're running, 6 to 7 bullets are going literally by them. Jason says he can feel these bullets going by him. And Weldon instead says, no, after that one shot, they were standing around talking. And because they were talking, I thought they were going to launch this, counterattack on me. So that was kind of ridiculous, that these two people that aren't in the military, that are just going to stand around and, hey, we just got shot at. What should we do? So I think that was absolutely ridiculous.
Do you think because she didn't take the stand, Diana didn't take the stand, that the prosecution, when they were questioning Weldon on the stand, that was essentially their opportunity to go after her?
Well, yes, in a way, because they were able to raise all the fact that, you were in the sexual relationship with Diana, you believe what she said, you guys wanted to, you were angry about the fact that, basically you're believing Diana's story, and you were kind of like the puppeteer. And that's what the prosecutor said in the closing argument, that, that Weldon acts like he's this big war hero, really, and he's always operating in this theater of war and combat, but he's actually operating in the theater of the absurd, and that he's really the puppeteer, and the puppet master was Diana. So she's pulling the strings. So in one way, yes, I think that they were able to kind of attack Diana, but I think through Weldon. But I think with Weldon, it was more about the fact getting into why he shot in the first place, in trying to make his story sound absolutely ridiculous, that you went out there with an AR-15 to kill and nothing less. And so I think that was the most important thing to get out of that testimony. But with Diana, I can see why, in a way, she wouldn't take this down, because you have the Aunt Diana testimony that is really, if you believe it, and the jury later said that they did, that's really devastating testimony, that you're talking to your aunt about, do you know someone that could scare or kill my husband? So that I think is hard to explain unless she could come back with, yeah, well, I was just, I was angry and upset. I was just, we say things we don't mean. It was all impulsive. We say things to our loved ones that we just say whatever, but we don't really mean it, and we're not going to act on it.
Right. So now let's get to the verdict. So do you think that her fainting was real, or like performance art, or like showmanship?
I think that her fainting was real. I think that if you look at all the things that, any of the clips that you've ever seen of her in court, especially when she's first arrested at that first hearing, she is an absolute mess. Okay, this is somebody that is not used to being in the criminal justice system. She's not used to being arrested, and she's like crying and sobbing. She's a wreck. So when they came back with this verdict, she later said to one of these interviewers that she was shocked by how fast it happened, because they came back within a half day, and that she really believed that the jury was going to believe that that she wasn't trying to have Greg killed, that they were just trying to do this crazy plot of scaring her husband so that they could bring out her fears and her belief, actually, that her husband was molesting their child. So I think when she did faint, because I watched her, she was like, her face when they first said that first guilty was like absolute shock. Like, wait, what did they say? And then as the guilty verdicts kept coming, she was just like, you could just see that stunned look on her face. Right, like, what? And then it was just like this, from looking at her turning like, what, to this, then like almost like she went into this, her like, where she just almost like kind of lost focus. She's just like, what? And boom, she just hit the table. And then that's when it was just pandemonium.
Well, as a sort of an aside, Deanne and I watched Diana's YouTube cooking show, and I gotta say that's yet another crime that she committed on society. That was really bad and hard to sit through. What was that all about?
I saw some of those myself, and I don't know what she was doing. It was like, the ones where she was rhyming.
Yeah, that was awful. Cringy.
She's rhyming them all. I don't know, but I don't know what she was trying to achieve. I don't know if at that time that was when Greg wasn't working and she needed extra money, or what she was trying to do. So, or, some people just do it because they like it. So I don't really know exactly why she did that, but it was kind of another aspect. It didn't come into the trial, but I did see those videos.
Do you think, or could you, I don't know, maybe obviously it's hard to get into her head, but did you see any clues in Diana's behavior and personality that she might someday go to this extreme?
No, you mean I don't, and see, I don't know really enough about her because I was at the trial, but what comes out in the trial is not always everything you know about her. But for somebody who is a competitive athlete, you have that aspect. For somebody that likes to win, or I guess it's two-part. You can say somebody was like, well, she was this athlete that wanted to win. She's used to competition, and she had to win. And I used to do family law, and at one time in my legal career, and we had this one client. They met playing competitive beach volleyball, and neither one of them ever wanted to lose emotion. They had to win. It was like they were playing, like you'd think that it was like the Olympics or something. So I don't know if she gotten that where she had to win, or if she truly, like her sister and family truly believe that Greg was this, doing these things, and she was really afraid, and that this is really what happened.
So we're about 5 years post-conviction now. Do you know anything about the current state of appeals in this case?
I don't know. I don't think that any of the appeals were successful. Diana was sentenced to 26 years to life, Weldon 50 years to life. The last I saw was that it hadn't been successful. And I did see, though, in the family law case that they were going to have some type of hearing to see if, for some type of visitation. In
Weldon's, he said in his jailhouse interview that there was no winners in this case. What do you know about how Greg and his son are doing, and Weldon's child and his wife or ex-wife, Leah?
I don't know really how they're doing. I know that Greg was very, he was not someone that wanted any limelight or any type of, this was a horrible case for him. He was not someone that wanted to be giving interviews left and right. I think he wanted to just have his child and just kind of like live a quiet life, like let this all kind of go away and let me just live our lives. And then with Weldon, the last I know is that, Leah was very supportive, and that she believed that Weldon was just trying to help as he had helped Crystal Harris, and that she still loved him and she was going to be there for him.
Do you know if Greg is still in San Diego?
I don't know. I didn't do any research on that. I would think that he would be, but I'm not sure. That'd be an interesting question. So all of this would be interesting to do a follow-up. Where are they now?
Yeah. Well, Aleida, I know that you like to try to determine what lessons can be learned from these cases that you cover.
Yes.
So what do you think the lessons would be from this case?
Well, and that's so interesting because, at one time, if you believe, I guess the part is like, what do you do? Like, if you're the Aunt Diana and your niece comes to you and says this, do you say, wow, she's kind of going off the deep end, we need to help her? Or do you believe the story and say, oh my gosh, her husband is abusing her, either way, we need to help her? So I think that, I don't know, maybe if Aunt Diana, not that I'm trying to blame her at all, because she to testify was excruciating for her, and she lost her family because of it. But if she had gone to Diana's sister or mother who came to the trial every day and said, hey, there's this problem and we need to, try to
talk her out of it.
we need to rein Diana. And Aunt Diana tried to. She told her, the moral and ethical issues aside, it was a remarkably dumb idea. That's a dumb idea to try to kill your husband. You'd be the first person investigated. You'll never get away with it. You can't be smarter than the police. So she told her that. So, but maybe to have gone further and said, I don't know if this family, I don't know if Diana was serious, but this is what she said, and I'm concerned. So I think maybe that was something. And then with Weldon, I think it's like, you got to be careful who you associate with. Really, I think if he truly was trying to help, like he says he was, and his family believes, you got to be careful who you get involved with.
Yeah, because everybody's got an agenda. But I want to go back to your statement about the aunt. Her conscience is clean. If she went to that extreme and told her all of those things and she still went through with it, that's on her, and the family shouldn't be mad at the aunt because she tried to talk her out of it, right?
Yes, she told her, yeah, exactly. She told her, don't do it. It's a dumb plan. Don't do it. And the moral and ethical issues aside, I mean, just the bottom line is dumb. You're not going to get away with it. Yeah. So, and I felt bad for her because when
rocking a hard spot. Yeah. She tried to do the right thing and not frame or set up your niece. At the same time, the law is the law, and she could find herself behind bars if she's not straightforward, right?
Yeah. Well, and then this also on that note too, though, that goes to, Aunt Diana did the right thing, and bless her heart for having to endure what she had to do. But I mean, another thing was the way all that came about was because she was talking about it at a restaurant and it was overheard by a deputy district attorney. So prosecutor.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. So that's another thing is like when you're out in public, be careful. Be careful what you talk about, because, if you're going to talk about somebody committing murder or planning murder, maybe don't use your megaphone now.
Don't go to a fashionable restaurant in Del Mar and just start discussing it over tea, right?
Yeah. So that's what happened. So now you have this deputy district attorney who's out on his own date night, overhears this conversation, tells the police, she's contacted. Now she ignores that. I'm not going to return these police calls, but boom, then she gets that subpoena, and then
it's over.
Then it's over for her. And then she doesn't know what to do, and she lies and tells the prosecutor, no, I didn't say that. And then finally is so anguished and doesn't know what to do. Is walking around the courthouse, doesn't know what to do. What should I do? What should I do? What should I do? And finally she has to say, I have to tell the truth. And she tells her, yes, she did say that. So I think that there's a lot of different lessons that, if you see somebody like Diana, was she reaching the breaking point? Could someone have intervened to help her? Or I don't.
Well, she seemed pretty determined. If you're not going to listen to your aunt, everybody telling you, she seemed like, hey, I'm going through with this, repercussions be damned, right?
Right. So I think that there was a lot of things that came out of it. I don't know exactly if you could say there's one clear-cut lesson, but other than don't try to murder your spouse.
That's a good one.
We'll start there, right?
You're not going to get away. Yes. And just like Aunt Diana said, take her advice. You'll be the first person investigated.
Right. Hey, Aleida, this was great. Thank you so much for your excellent analysis. And we hope that you will come back and break down other fascinating cases with us on Crime Redefined.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you so much. And I enjoyed talking to both of you. And yes, I always do find these cases very, very fascinating. And I do believe that we can learn lessons. And so maybe there's even a bigger lesson that will come to me, in time.
Great. Thank you, Aleida. Appreciate it.
Yeah, great job as always, Aleida. Thank you so much. And I know you've got some other cases that can even top this one.
Oh, yes. There's never an end, right? There's always, just when you think you've heard it all, you haven't. So.
Okay, Mehul. Wow. Lots to dissect on this one. Aleida did a great job of filling in the blanks and really bringing this case to life for us. What do you think?
She sure did. This is really an interesting study, I think, in human nature and psychology. I mean, it's really not
spoken
clear.
Like a scientist.
Yeah, I mean, it's, as Aleida said repeatedly, it's just not clear why Diana cracked and what led her to go to such extremes. And, it's also in a way, I guess, sort of sad that here Weldon was once this hero who he himself was on Dateline, and now he's fallen hard. So here's a question, Dion. I mean, who do you think corrupted whom here between Diana and Weldon?
Okay, so that's a great question. With Weldon, I think he started out really sincere, and I think he wanted to help. Later broke down how he had worked on helping out another female that was in an abusive relationship. Then I think he just got in too deep and maybe was mesmerized. With Diana, it's hard to say. It's like she may just have that, which I mentioned in the interview, that alpha female personality that just doesn't like to lose. So Yeah, I don't know. This is really hard. It's smart people making really stupid decisions. But I know you wanted to jump in and been chomping at the bit to talk about some of the forensics on this case.
Yeah. Before I do that, I'd say, like it or not, like sports, like aspects of life, court battles can be a game. That's just the way it is. So certainly that mentality of having to win, maybe at all costs, could come into play. I mean, in other words, through her struggle with the family court and getting custody and all that, that all makes sense. That sort of, like you say, that alpha attitude. But yes, back to forensics. Okay. DNA from diarrhea. We haven't covered that yet on Crime Redefined.
That's a new one.
That's a new one. And let's just break down the science a little bit here. So, Dion, essentially anything that comes out of the body will have some level of DNA in it. So, if you think of our gastrointestinal tract, from our mouth to the very end, it's lined with cells that contain DNA. So during, shall we call it, elimination, those cells will inevitably be picked up and they will be in the diarrhea. So it is a challenging sample, though. As you might imagine, Dion. So, there are substances in fecal material that would inhibit the actual DNA typing chemistry.
Okay, and two quick questions before I forget. Hang on.
Sure.
So one is what you're about to say, does that dilute the DNA? And then my second question would be, is there a expiration date for DNA in fecal matter?
Well, you probably should have waited for the second part of the answer. But so the other problem here is that there's tons of bacteria in fecal material. So those two things together, the fact that the DNA could get sort of chewed apart, which is, I think, your question about dilution. This is not a great environment for DNA to survive. Also, just because there's other things like bile salts in there that when you actually go to type the DNA in the lab, that can interfere. So this is a tough sample, but in recent years, biotech manufacturers have actually come up with DNA extraction kits that are specifically for this type of sample. So they help overcome some of the hurdles.
DNA free market, right?
Yeah, it's they have like a stool kit, a fecal kit. Wow. It's incredible.
All right. Well, this is fascinating and gross.
Well, thank you.
What about urine and vomit while we're at it?
Really the same idea that those are things that come out of the body. Now, in urine, typically the DNA is pretty dilute. So you need a fair amount of urine to get a reasonable result. Vomit, same thing. Now, again, you have a highly acidic environment. You may have things that somebody ate that could interfere with the process. So while all of these things have DNA, they can be challenging, but it's certainly possible. And as our technology evolves, these become easier and easier samples, basically.
Okay, so I'm not really sure where I'm going to go with this, but what I'm going to put together is kind of like two quick thoughts. You have the criminals committing the crime, and then you have technology in crime fighting counter that, and then you have the criminals countering that. So a great example of that is there was when you got fingertip technology, they started wearing gloves. So now are we at a level that you got to start bringing like a bladder kit and wearing diapers to crime scenes?
Yeah, and
as a countermeasure to the crime technology.
Yeah, I think I said this in the interview. You really, if you're going to commit a crime, you better start watching Forensic Files and just be up on all the latest. Because just when there's some
or
kind
hire
of sample,
you as a consultant, right?
That too. Just when there's some sort of sample that we really can't get DNA out of, all of a sudden, give it a few years and we'll have the technology to make it happen. But yeah, it is very hard to commit a crime and be completely undetected. Biologically, of course, if it's a violent crime. And as we've talked about before, just your digital footprint as well. That's hard to cover up, equally hard to cover up. So I want to, I work on a lot of cases, Dion, where there's allegations of child sexual abuse and there's DNA evidence. And many times the defense keys in on a potential motive of the other party, particularly if there is a divorce battle, if there's a custody battle. And, you might look at that sideways a little bit, but my gosh, this case appears to illustrate that, somebody could take it to that extreme to make that kind of accusation that is really false.
Yeah, they just, they try to, just stain the other party.
Right.
Muddy them up. Yeah, that's right. Stick that on them. It's becoming so common now that it almost, for me, in some of these cases, becomes a tell. When someone goes right to that, it tells me that maybe their case isn't that strong or their defense isn't that strong,
right?
Because they're using it. You don't need to do that if you're not desperate, because especially in his particular case, there was no history of that.
Yeah, and maybe just getting in the weeds a little bit, but the DNA can be tricky because DNA can transfer in the wash machine. So you figure if you're looking at a family that washes all their clothes together, right, you could have innocent transfer, say, of semen from the father's underwear to the child's underwear.
Right.
And that finding, put that with a emotionally charged allegation, that looks bad. So it becomes very, very tricky business. And, that, like you say, that's why you need a DNA consultant. But another forensic point I wanted to touch on was the firearm evidence. So Aleida made reference to this brass catcher. So, other than a revolver, many or most firearms, when they're discharged, the expended case is ejected out and could end up at the scene. And this is often very key evidence in cases. So number one, they can look at that fired cartridge case, compare it to a gun, and see if that cartridge case had been fired from that particular gun.
Right.
Also, you can do DNA. So even though the firearm cartridge has went through the gun, it's exposed to heat and pressure and all that, the DNA can survive. And that can help you perhaps determine who at least loaded the gun. So this is actually one of the first cases where I've heard for a fact that a brass catcher was used. So basically those expended cartridge cases didn't end up at the crime scene. This brass catcher is basically just a nylon bag that's
right,
attached to the gun or placed near it. And I got to say, Dion, I think that it's a sign of somebody being aware of, the potential of that forensic evidence and knowing not to leave it at the crime scene, because ultimately, had there not been that DNA at the scene, this becomes a highly circumstantial case.
Yeah, absolutely. And haven't you had a couple of cases that you've been personally involved with where you were going after DNA on shell casings?
Yeah, it's fairly routine now. There's been an evolution. Even maybe 5 years ago, detectives would say, you can't get DNA from that. And, as our technology evolves and gets more sensitive, it's kind of like a routine sample now.
Well, there you have it. You've heard from a legal and a forensic experts on the Diana Lovejoy case. We look forward to having Aleida come back to Crime Redefined and help us break down more fascinating cases. Any last comments, Mehul?
No, just I think Aleida, I love the color that she brings, and I really can't wait. I know she's got even, juicier cases. So we look forward to having her on, hopefully as a regular commentator for us.
So listeners, if you're enjoying the subject matter we cover, please be sure to check out all of our episodes and interact with us on social media. And thanks again for all your support. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Crime Redefined podcast. Like us on Facebook and follow us on Twitter at Crime Redefined. Please send us your comments and questions and join us for the next episode.